Okay, so think about, the last time you put something together. Maybe tightened a screw.
Right, seems simple enough.
Yeah, totally simple. But behind those, well, those everyday fasteners, there's this whole surprisingly complex global market. We're talking about the tools that make them taps and dies.
Exactly. And it's a bigger deal than you might think. We're diving into a 2025 report today.
Right, so you don't have to scroll through pages and pages. We've done the digging.
We have. The focus is this global taps and dies market. Back in 2025, it was estimated at USD 2,125.6 million.
Over $2 billion
Mhm.
and heading upwards.
Definitely. The projection is for it to reach, let's see, USD 322.81 million by 2033.
Okay, wow. What kind of growth rate is that?
That works out to a CAGR, an annual growth rate of 4.50%. Pretty steady.
Okay, 4.5%. Now, just be clear for everyone listening. Taps and dies, what are we actually talking about?
Good point. So basically, a tap is the tool you use to cut the threads inside something. Think of the inside of a nut.
Got it. Internal threads, like making the hole ready for a bolt.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And a die, well, it does the opposite. It cuts the external threads on a cylinder, like the shaft of a bolt.
Right. Male and female threads, essentially.
You got it. And these can be hand tools, the kind you might have in a toolbox or used in big industrial machines.
And they're crucial for, well, almost everything, right?
Absolutely fundamental. Cars, aerospace, electronics, construction, even putting together flat pack furniture.
So yeah, a really vital, if maybe overlooked sector. And that's our mission today, to pull out the key stuff.
Exactly. We're looking at the market size, what's driving the growth, how it differs region by region, who the main players are, and where things seem to be headed.
Consider it your shortcut guide.
That's the idea.
All right, let's jump in then. That 2025 global market picture, USD 2,125.6 million. How did that break down geographically?
Okay, so the big players in 2025 were North America and Europe. North America actually held the largest slice, over 40%.
100%? Wow.
Yeah, that translated to about USD 616.42 million. Europe wasn't far behind, though, with over 30% of the market.
And their value.
That was around USD 786.47 million. So yeah, together they really dominated the market share back then.
Which kind of makes sense, given their established industrial bases.
Oh,
But you mentioned growth earlier. Where's the fastest expansion happening?
That's where the Asia-Pacific region comes in, really the standout story for growth.
Okay.
So in 2025, their share was about 23%, roughly USD 510.14 million. But looking ahead, between 2025 and 2033, their projected growth rate is 7.2% annually.
7.2% CAGR. That's huge compared to the overall 4.5%.
It really is. It signals a significant dynamic shift in where the demand is accelerating.
Definitely something to watch. What about the other parts of the world? South America, Middle East, Africa?
Yep, they're in the mix too, those smaller shares.
Ah.
South America was over 5% of the market in 2025. The Middle East was around 2%, and Africa about 1%.
And are they growing as well?
They are, yeah. Pretty respectable growth rates projected too. South America at 5.2% annually, the Middle East at 5.8%, and Africa at 4.8%.
So growth across the board, really, but clearly led by Asia-Pacific.
Exactly. Oh, and one interesting point from the segmentation, the fastest growing application area.
Yeah. Not heavy industry.
Surprisingly, no. It's household and DIY.
Huh. The do-it-yourself market is driving the fastest growth for taps and dies. That's unexpected.
It is a bit, yeah. Quite fascinating.
Okay, so we've got the global snapshot, the regional picture, this DIY surprise. Let's dig into why it's growing. What are the main engines behind this market expansion?
Well, the biggest one is probably pretty straightforward, like ongoing industrialization and just general manufacturing growth.
Right, more factories making more stuff.
Exactly. Across all sorts of sectors, you've got automotive, aerospace, electronics, construction machinery. They all rely heavily on threaded parts.
So more parts needed means more tools needed to make the threads.
Precisely. And you see companies responding. The report mentions Milwaukee Tool, for instance, expanding their line of threading solutions back in 2023. That's a direct response to this demand.
Okay, so general industrial growth is number one. What else?
Infrastructure development is another big one. Think about all the nuts and bolts needed for new roads, bridges, buildings, power grids.
Loads of fasteners.
Huge quantities. So that drives demand for taps and dies, too. And then there's a more specific trend, the shift towards electric and hybrid vehicles.
Ah, okay. How does the EV revolution impact taps and dies?
Well, EVs have different components, right? Electric drivetrains, battery units, specific cooling systems. These often require specialized fasteners and, therefore, specialized taps and dies to create the threads for them.
So it's not just replacing combustion engine parts, it's creating demand for new types of threading tools.
Exactly. It's a whole new area of application, essentially.
Interesting. Anything else fueling the fire?
Yeah, one more factor highlighted is sustainability.
Sustainability. How does that relate to tabs and dies?
Well, there's a growing focus across manufacturing on eco-friendly practices. This translates into demand for tools, including taps and dies that are maybe made from recyclable materials, or perhaps more significantly, have advanced coatings that make them last much longer.
So reducing waste and resource consumption by making the tools themselves more durable and greener.
Precisely. Longer tool life means less frequent replacement, less energy used in manufacturing new tools, and so on.
Okay, that makes sense. So industrial growth, infrastructure, EVs, and sustainability are pushing demand up. Are there any brakes on this? Anything holding the market back?
The main restraint mentioned is economic fluctuations, business cycles.
Standard economic headwinds, basically.
Pretty much. When economies slow down, manufacturing activity tends to decrease, investment gets put on hold.
And fewer things being made means less need for taps and dies.
Exactly. It's a direct correlation. Reduced manufacturing output lowers the demand for these kinds of production tools.
Okay, fairly predictable, but important to note. Now, we touched on EVs and sustainability as drivers, but are they also considered major trends shaping the future here?
Yes, the report really emphasizes those two as key ongoing trends. The rise of EVs isn't a blip, it's a long-term shift that will continue to require specialized tooling.
Right.
And the sustainability focus is also gaining momentum. Pressure for greener manufacturing isn't going away, so demand for those eco-friendly and longer-lasting tools will likely keep growing.
Got it. So those trends are embedded now. Let's shift gears to the companies actually making these tools. What does the competitive landscape look like? Is it concentrated?
It's described as highly competitive. You've got a real mix, some big global names that operate everywhere, but also quite a few smaller, more regional players who specialize.
Okay. Can you name some of the key players mentioned?
Sure. The report lists companies like Kennametal, Cleveland, Triumph Twist Drill, Titex Tools, Goering, Chicago Latrobe, OSG, and Michigan Drill.
Some familiar names in the tooling world there. Any recent moves by these big players worth noting?
Yeah, a couple of examples were given. Kennametal, for instance, apparently enhanced its drilling portfolio in 2022 with something called Juggo drill technology.
Okay, some product innovation.
Exactly.
Meh.
And their 2024 financial results are also mentioned, showing significant capital expenditures and returns to shareholders. Stuff that suggests they're actively investing and feeling confident about the market.
Right. Signals of continued investment and strategic focus. Okay, that gives us the feel for the competitive side. Let's circle back to those regional details. North America and Europe had the biggest shares in 2025. Why is that?
Well, for North America, its leadership position back then comes down to really strong industrial activity, good existing infrastructure, and constant advancements in manufacturing tech.
And within North America?
The U.S. is the giant, obviously, holding the largest share, about USD 486.36 million in 2025. That's really driven by high demand for advanced high-performance tools.
Makes sense.
Canada's also significant, around USD 74 million, thanks to its advanced manufacturing base, and Mexico contributed about USD 56 million.
Okay, so a solid manufacturing base demanding quality tools. That's the story in Europe. They had a slightly smaller share, but still very large.
Yeah, Europe's USD 786.47 million market in 2025 is heavily influenced by its powerhouse automotive and industrial machinery sectors.
Right, the German auto industry, for example.
Exactly. Germany actually had the largest individual market in Europe listed at USD 155.72 million. And interestingly, the report links some of Germany's strength to its emphasis on sustainable manufacturing, tying back to that trend we discussed. The UK was also substantial at USD 132.13 million, again driven by automotive and industrial machinery. And then you have significant contributions from France, Italy, Russia, Spain, and others listed with their 2025 figures too. It's a broad base.
So strong traditional industries plus that growing sustainability angle in places like Germany. Now, Asia Pacific, the growth champion. What's lighting the fire there?
And it's really about rapid industrialization and just the sheer scale of manufacturing expansion happening there. China is the biggest player in the region, unsurprisingly. USD 214.26 million in 2025, fueled especially by its massive automotive and growing aerospace sectors.
But the fastest growth globally, you said, was India.
Yes, that's the headline grabber. India's projected CAGR is 9.1%. That's the highest in the world for this market.
9.1%. Why such rapid growth there?
Driven by its own wave of industrialization, urbanization, infrastructure development. Make in India initiatives likely play a role too. Its 2025 market size was smaller, around USD 51 million, but that growth rate points to huge potential.
Absolutely. A key market to watch. And other APAC countries.
Yeah, the report also breaks out figures for Japan, South Korea, Australia, Singapore, Taiwan, Southeast Asia as a whole, and the rest of APAC. They're all part of that dynamic regional picture.
Okay, a really dynamic region. Let's quickly cover the other areas. South America.
South America's growth, estimated at USD 80.77 million in 2025, is linked to its own industrial activities, but also, interestingly, that DIY trend we mentioned earlier.
Ah, the DIY factor
Right.
pops up again.
Especially in Brazil, which is the largest market there, at about USD 34.6 million. Argentina, Colombia, others are also growing.
And the Middle East and Africa. Similar drive.
For the Middle East, with an USD 85 million market, growth is tied to production and maintenance activities, particularly in the oil and gas sector. Countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar are key.
Okay.
And Africa, a smaller market around USD 47 million in 2025, but growing due to its own industrialization push and infrastructure projects, especially in places like Nigeria and South Africa.
It's really interesting how these global tools reflect such specific regional economic stories. Okay, let's look inside the market itself now, the segmentation. How is it broken down?
It's looked at by product type, application, and sales channel.
Right, so product type first. What kind of materials are these taps and dies made from?
The dominant material is expected to stay high-speed steel, or HSS.
HSS. Why is that the leader?
Because it's got great hardness, it resists wear really well, and crucially, it keeps those properties even when things get hot during machining. That's vital for tough jobs in aerospace and automotive.
So performance under pressure, basically. Is anything challenging HSS?
Well, the fastest growing segment identified as alloy steel.
Alloy steel.
Yeah. It offers improved strength and, importantly, better corrosion resistance compared to some other steels. So there's increasing demand for that added durability and resistance. Carbon steel is also mentioned as being part of the mix.
Okay, so HSS holds the crown for now. But alloy steel is gaining ground due to its specific advantages. What about the application? Where are these tools being used?
Unsurprisingly, the biggest category is industrial. That just reflects the sheer volume used in manufacturing plants globally.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But the fastest growing was?
Household and DIY, yeah, that trend again. It's really making an impact. More people tackling home projects, repairs, maybe even hobbies that involve threading.
It's more than just saving money, isn't it?
Yes.
It feels like a cultural shift, too.
I think so. That desire for hands-on work, personalization, maybe a bit of self-sufficiency, it all adds up to more demand for basic tools like taps and dies in the consumer space.
Fascinating. Okay, last segment. Sales channels. How are people and businesses actually buying these things?
Well, currently, the report states the online segment has the largest market share.
Online. Ahead of traditional industrial suppliers.
Apparently so. Likely due to the convenience, the wider selection, maybe ease of comparison.
Well,
E-commerce has really penetrated even this industrial space.
that is interesting. But is it also the fastest growing?
No, the fastest growing channel is actually retail.
Retail, like hardware stores.
Exactly, which probably ties directly back to that booming DIY interest.
Mm-hmm.
More hobbyists and even tradespeople picking up tools from local stores.
So online is biggest now, but physical retail is catching up fastest, likely thanks to the DIY boom. It all connects.
It seems to, yeah.
Okay, that paints a really comprehensive picture.
Huh.
So if we were to boil this all down, what are the absolute key takeaways from this deep dive?
All right, let's summarize. 1, it's a significant global market, already over $2 billion USD in 2025, and projected to grow steadily at 4.5% annually.
Okay. 2,
Growth is driven primarily by industrialization and manufacturing expansion, but with strong boosts from infrastructure projects, the EV transition, and surprisingly, the DIY sector.
Right, the DIY factor.
3, geographically, North America and Europe were dominant in 2025, but Asia-Pacific, particularly led by India's growth rate, is where the most dynamic expansion is happening.
Got it. APAC is key for the future.
4, material-wise, high-speed steel, HSS, is king for now due to performance, but alloy steel is the fastest-growing alternative.
HSS leads, alloy grows.
5. Application industrial use is the biggest segment, but household DIY is growing fastest.
Industrial bulk, DIY speed.
And finally, 6. Sales channels online currently holds the largest share, but retail is the fastest growing channel, again likely linked to DIY.
Online leads, retail booms. Perfect summary.
That's the core of it.
It really is fascinating, isn't it? How a
Yeah.
deep dive into something seemingly as basic as taps and dies actually reflects these huge global shifts in manufacturing, technology like EVs, sustainability concerns, and even, how we spend our weekends doing DIY.
Absolutely. These niche markets are often microcosms of bigger trends.
Totally. So maybe a final thought for you listening. What other seemingly small or specialized markets out there might actually hold the key to understanding the bigger economic picture? Where else could you look to see these global trends playing out in unexpected ways?
That's a good question to ponder.
Maybe digging into some other manufacturing reports or industry trends could uncover some surprising connections. Definitely something to think about.